Hey everyone, I thought I would jump on today and talk about a pretty big topic, and we're going to hear a lot more about it. We've been hearing quite a bit about it already, but Biden's reelection bid and regarding student loans. This is a big topic, and we're of course not going to tackle the entire topic, and we're also going to try to leave alone the politics part. That's becoming increasingly difficult with any topic, but we're less interested in the politics part of this, but just more of the notion of reforming university and looking at the costs. So just specifically from a country's point of view, and you could apply this to the U.S. as well as Canada, the cost to go to school and whether it's a good plan to restructure that. And then also forgiving past debt. So when you first look at it, you think, should we forgive all debt? Well, that would be a hard no, regardless of how unfair the system is anywhere, because that's about $890 million to $1.4 trillion in the U.S. If you were to say, let's forgive all college debt. And that's obviously not what's being discussed or what's proposed or in place or anything of that nature. We'll get into some of the details. But that's on one breath, you'd say, well, they've already printed trillions of dollars already. Why not print another trillion and just get students out of debt? That seems to be the approach from a lot of these newer economists that are of one particular flavor, is that you can just print your way out of problems. Just print more money and just, that'll be it. Now that, once again, we're going to get a little political, but there's a funny tweet today from Javier Milei in Argentina, who says, if printing money would end poverty, then printing diplomas would end stupidity. Now, that's a bit harsh. I think it's funny. It's absolutely true. You can't print your way out. But and even a first-year economics class, you'll learn that. You can't print your way out of issues. But that seems to be coming up again over the last 4 or 5 years that you can. It's quite distressing. So looking at forgiving student debt, a lot of students have a ridiculous amount of debt, especially in the States. Canada's rising as well. It's creeping up there quite a bit. And there's an incentive towards schools to go for foreign students over their own domestic. So this is bringing up a lot of issues right off the bat. Why would I take a Canadian domestic or U.S. domestic student if I can charge a foreign student 2, 3, 4 times more? That's a fair question. Why would you? Not only that student might then get an immigration policy where they can now move to the country, which would also, if you're a certain flavor of politics where you want open borders and you just mass migration, that would be another efficient way to get people in the country. If you are more interested in the people that are already here, that you've made promises to already, that you said, listen, we're going to be here to help you get college and education and everything else, you're going to be a little annoyed because you're favoring one group over another. And that is happening on large scale. If we look at, say, the average cost of a U.S. student for a 4-year institution, it's about $27,000 a year or $108,000 over 4 years. If you're out of state, so if say you live in Massachusetts, you're going to New York, it's $45,000 per year, $182,000 over 4 years. A private nonprofit, so you're going to an Ivy League or somewhere of that nature, $58,000, $234,000 over 4 years. So that's an extreme level of debt to get educated. And a lot of degrees are liberal arts. That's an exceptional amount of money for a liberal arts degree that often, especially, lately on this kind of woke campus, you might doing the poetry of P. Diddy degree for 4 years. You might get an underwater basket weaving degree or some sort of XYZ studies degree. You don't have a lot of prospects coming out with that. So when you're looking at debt forgiveness, if someone said, listen, we're considering those of merit from certain incomes, from hard-pressed families that are doing physics, engineering, trade school, something where it's of high demand. We need these people. There's jobs, programming, you name it, doctors. Yes, that sounds like a good idea, or some sort of plan to put in place. If you chose to do a degree in theater and acting and whatever else and interesting conceptual thinking, uh, no, I would say it's less of a priority. Um, and also, how would you go about giving this money to the different groups? When we look at and once again, keeping out the politics of the plan and the Biden administration, if you look at what they rolled out as relief for, would be that if you've made 10 years of payments and the original amount borrowed was 12,000 or less, that they would forgive that. Now that doesn't, I mean, I think that's 9 billion, I think, or no, sorry, 1.9 billion dollars. That would be okay. But that doesn't sound so harsh, but that also sounds very specific. You've already paid 10 years, you've had a full-time job, and the original amount was only 12,000 or less. That's a very minute portion of the public, and those that gone to university. So you think, oh, well, who is that actually helping? Um, and it's an interesting question to pose. And the reason why I wanted to bring up specific sectors, or like say med school, is John Hopkins just announced, I think a day or two ago, that their med school will give free tuition to students whose families make less than 300K. Now, once again, who is going to get that, and what's the criteria to getting to med school? Because once again, if you've been paying any attention to schooling in Canada or the US, it's merit has gone out the window. So it isn't necessarily those who scored the highest, did the best, most qualified, that are getting into any of these schools. So if it's based on, yes, you've scored the highest, you have an exceptional merit, and you come from a disadvantaged, or not even disadvantaged, if it's under 300, that still opens up a huge list of people. That's wow, that's awesome. Way to go, John Hopkins. And that comes from a gift from Bloomberg family. I think it was $1 billion they gave. That's a huge step in the right direction. And I think that once again, instead of forgiving past debts from past decisions, and also where are we trying to go, whether it's the US or Canada, where you want to focus your youth and say, listen, we have a hard, strong desire to have AI trained computer technologists, technology driven engineers, you name it. We're going to provide support for you. Well, hey, that's something I could get behind. But once again, when you're looking at that being a burden on the taxpayer, so that's you and I. So, people that have lived here for a long period of time, is that then given to someone who's just walked in the door? So you can see where it comes down to politics and economics. It becomes very, very difficult, a topic. And sometimes when we look at some of these huge ideas like debt forgiveness, is what really should be done is there needs to be a very hard look at, even though a lot of these universities aren't for profit, they're basically for profit. They're charging incredible amounts. They're already getting donations from universities and from schools. They also get incredible amounts of money from big pharma. That one has to look and go, what's the basis from which you're viewing and making decisions for your school? And perhaps the bigger question is, are you allowing too many people to come into the country when you don't have the infrastructure and the universities to support it? If it's that you can't give basic education to the current people in your that you're supporting and that live in the country or have lived in the country for decades, should you be pushing and pushing and pushing more migration and more people to come here when you simply don't have the facilities and you're able to jack the prices up? So tell me what you think. This is a very tough topic, and you can't talk about it without talking about politics. But once again, when you're talking, we're finding we're in a world where that is more and more embedded and immersed. And I'll wrap it up by saying there's a channel I love to watch. I'm not going to mention who it is, but they're a great channel. And the person said, we want anyone of any political persuasion, and we don't care what this and this, and we have no opinion. That is a very naive thing to say nowadays. I would say that generally 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago in the West, that would be a fair thing to say. But the depths of how far left to promote active communism, which is actually being done, or statism to such an extent where you're having the state take control of everything and provide everything, provide all the jobs, pay for all this. But that's a loop that's being fed by taxpayers. That's a very different system than a free market capitalist system. So, we're playing a very tight game right now between, no one really likes to talk about politics, and most people haven't really studied politics to talk about politics. But we have a divide right now that isn't just your kind of center right and center left. The polar sides of the extreme left is being huge in power for some time in Europe, and certainly in Canada for more than a decade, or sorry, for about a decade, and for a couple of years in the States. That you're finding a hard far right is emerging as well. And neither one of those solutions are very good. We want to get back to that center and be slightly to the right, slightly to the left, and kind of argue about a little bit of tax here and there. But I think what we're trying to nail down here is that if we could try to get back into the center, get everyone's goals aligned, and find solutions, that I think is the best solution that we could come together and agree upon. Tell me what your thoughts are. This is a big question. And of course, some of the nuances and details that I've talked about, I may have missed some points and may have kind of skimmed over others. But tell me what you think, and especially when we're dealing with debt forgiveness, the cost of university, because all of that has been inflating at a ridiculous rate, and that's really hard, not only for someone who's of the average working class, blue collar, but even to an upper middle class existence, it's taking a big chunk of money. So love to have your thoughts. Reach out and tell us what you think.